When the market is crashing, it's pretty easy to feel like you're the only one who ever feels this anxious. Right. But, the truth is some of the greatest investors in history have lived through this same chaos. They've survived it. They've thrived through it. And some of the wisdom that they've shared with us throughout the years still applies to today. So with some of the recent market volatility, we thought it'd be a good idea to take a look at what the greats say about market crashes and react to it. So we're going to get Frank, a financial advisor's reactions to some of these quotes on today's episode, and I hope it helps you. Welcome to the Time Blueprint. I'm Walter Storholt alongside financial advisor Frank Oliver. And Frank, we've got a great show today because it should be kind of fun. We're going to look at what some of the greatest investors of all time we're saying they are. Their portfolios are probably saying they are.
They are, yeah. There's a lot of smart people in here.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about like Warren Buffett, Benjamin Graham, Jack Bogle, and a few others, and see what they say about how to think, act, and respond, and how to stay grounded as well during market turbulence and when things are feeling uncertain, which a lot of people are feeling over the last couple of weeks and months.
Right, exactly.
So this should be a lot of fun, Frank. Let's start with Warren Buffett, shall we?
Absolutely. So, the world's greatest.
The greatest.
Right?
And you've probably heard the quote before, but it's an easy one to start out with. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. And I feel like I always hear about him. We know no one can time the market, but I do feel like I'm always hearing a story about Warren Buffett going to cash shortly before the market has downturns and then pouring his money back in when the market's at the bottom. It's not really timing the market, but it's applying that thinking. It
is applying that thinking. This is kind of a contrarian view.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when people are fearful, that's when you get greedy and vice versa. And I agree with that. And Warren Buffett has stockpiled a lot of cash this year.
Yes.
Interesting timing. Yeah, absolutely. So I believe right now is a time to be greedy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yep. That was an easy one. All right, we'll get it more interesting with some of these. The author of The Intelligent Investor was Benjamin Graham. And Benjamin said the investor's chief problem and even his worst enemy is likely to be himself.
Right.
That one's got to speak to you.
Yeah, it does a little bit. I think people's just emotions run crazy sometimes when these market events take place.
Yeah.
And their emotions cause them to make irrational decisions, They pull out of the market at the right time. They re-enter the market at a bad time. We have clients that will invest in cruise ships like Royal Caribbean because they get a credit card. They get a discount on their purchase, right? If they have an investment with Royal Caribbean.
Oh, interesting.
Even as it's crashing during COVID, they still wanted to invest in Royal Caribbean because they got a little perk when the pandemic passed. So,
it's funny the decisions that we make to like save $1, we'll spend 10.
Sure,
that kind of mentality.
Exactly.
Tripping
over pennies.
Yes. Lots of sayings we could pull out there. Right. The founder of Vanguard, Jack Bogle, said it's a little longer quote, but he said, "Stay the course. No matter what happens, stick to your program. I've said stay the course 1,000 times, and I meant it every time. It is the most important single piece of investment wisdom I can give you." Echoes what you were just talking about. Stay invested, keep going.
You have to stay invested. If we go back and look at what's happened in the last 5 years, it's been a pretty dynamic environment we've been in. So we went through COVID, and then we rode that out, and then 2022 happened, right?
Yeah.
Rode that out, and now look what's happening in 2025. But if you would have tried to time those events, you got out of the market at the wrong time during the pandemic, got back in at the wrong time, tried to reinvest back in the top of 2022, right before it crashed, there could have been some challenging events that would have eroded your portfolio.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Yep. John Templeton, that'll be a name that a lot of people know. The 4 most dangerous words in investing are, this time, it's different.
Right. We always think that, don't we? Well, this is the worst I've ever seen the economy. This is the worst time we've ever had. Honestly, people are still spending money. People are still traveling. The economy may be cooling off a little bit, but initially, isn't that what they wanted anyway? They wanted the economy to cool off a little bit to control inflation. If you look at the numbers, we haven't crashed. There's some cooling off, but the economy has not come to a halt. It hasn't come to a stop.
I can feel like that one resonates, right? Because 2008, you had a lot of people thinking, well, this time it's different. And 2008 may have been as close as we've come to this time it's different.
Exactly, yeah.
But then COVID, everybody was feeling that. And we hadn't been through a pandemic in 100 years, right? Or approximately to that scale. So it did feel different, but we'd been through them before.
Exactly.
And we've been through wars before. We've been through other things before.
Absolutely.
The market survives.
So I guess in one aspect, those times were different, and maybe today is a little different because of the tariffs, that the administration is fighting. We will recover from this. We always have, and we'll get past this.
The spark is different, but the end result in terms of where the market ends up long term,
good way to say
be
it.
consistent.
Yep, absolutely.
So, okay. Yep. All right, we've got two more here. Peter Lynch said, far more money has been lost by investors preparing for corrections or trying to anticipate corrections than it has been lost in the corrections themselves.
Peter Lynch was a very, very famous manager for years and years and years. He actually created the Contra Fund for Fidelity quite a while ago, and one of the best performing funds in history back in that time. So Peter Lynch knows what he's talking about. Yeah. And preparing for corrections, Warren Buffett, like we mentioned, maybe the only one that was smart enough to prepare for this one. But it's tough to prepare for these. It's tough to time the market. Just make sure that your portfolio is balanced correctly. And you just, again, I can't say this enough. We have to ride out these storms, but just make sure you have the proper construction of your portfolio.
Yeah. And that's the other thing to keep in mind, too, with anybody, when you hear these stories of timing the market or getting it right, I think about like The Big Short and 2008.
Right.
You're talking about a handful out of billions who figured it out and got it right. The chances of you being in that group and being able to time it multiple times on top of that is pretty slim.
Well, there's just events that you can't time. 2008 might have been a little different because I think some people could see the leverage in the mortgage industry. They could see the leverage in the banking industry. They could see, people leveraged in general. And so there's probably was some pretty good data at that point to cause some people to have some concern and maybe short the markets. But how could you short the pandemic? Did we really know we were going to have a pandemic? Right. How do we short these tariffs? Did we really know what level of tariffs were going to come out? Now, maybe preparing and being a little cautious based on, the Rose Garden talk with President Trump. But all in all, we just don't know these events are going to take place, So there's just not a lot of forward-pointing data in some of these events. So
the wisdom in all these quotes for sure. We get to the last one here. The author of The Psychology of Money, which is a very cool book, Morgan Housel, he said, risk is what's left over when you think you've thought of everything. You have to absorb that one a little bit.
Yeah, you do have to absorb that one a little bit.
Risk is what's left over when you think you've thought of everything. How does that speak to you?
I'm not sure it is. And I reviewed these quite a bit. So, risk is what's left over when you think you've thought of everything.
Meaning it's always there. Like you can't get rid of it. There's always going to be some risk.
No, that's exactly right.
I've accounted for everything. I was trying
to put it into words, but there's always risk in investing, right?
Right.
There's risk in driving. There's risk in life. I mean, if you're just going to sit on the couch, and there's going to be a risk of being unhealthy,
right?
So everything in life has a degree of risk. You just have to manage that risk and address it appropriately.
Just ask an actuary; they'll tell you.
Exactly. Right? Yes, I know a few of them. They're a lot of fun to talk to.
Yep.
Yes. High level conversations.
Yes.
Yep.
So really interesting stuff. I love these quotes. Did you have a favorite from the group?
I'm a big Jack Bogle fan for sure.
So stay the course.
It's stay the course. Yeah, I just can't say how important that is. It's a daily conversation here at the office.
For sure.
Yep.
Well, I hope some of these quotes, some of this wisdom from some of the great investors out there give you a little bit more confidence as you try to navigate some of the turbulence that we've been through over the last couple of weeks and months in the markets. Remember to stay the course. Remember that Frank and his team at Oliver Asset Management, based in Colorado, they're always here for you to ask questions to give you answers, to give you some clarity, take you through the planning process. In fact, if you want to book a consultation, you can certainly do that by going to the link in the description of today's show. We also have a link for it on Frank's website. So all that information and the resources are in today's show description. Just check that out if you've got any questions, and you can easily book and start a conversation about your portfolio and start putting that plan together as well. Frank, thanks for all the help today.
Thank you, Walter.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining us. Investment advisory services offered through Creative One Wealth, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Oliver Asset Management and Creative One Wealth are unaffiliated entities. Licensed insurance professional. This information is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as advice or a recommendation for your specific circumstances. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Insurance product guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing company. We are not affiliated with any government agency and do not provide tax or legal advice.